Most founder-led businesses leak more capital efficiency than they capture. And here's how we measure it. In this video, we're going to look at why it happens and what you can do about it. I'm Julian Fernandez. I run an advisory practice called Execution Economics, and the model behind it is what I'm going to walk you through in the next 10 minutes. So here's the core idea. Most founder-led businesses don't underperform because of strategy or the market, or because their team lacks a lot of talent. They underperform, stall, or in worst cases fail because of execution leakage. And now by execution leakage, I mean the delta between what the operating system of your business should produce against what it actually produces, given the same inputs. How priorities get set and how delegation actually flows. It's not an effort or a skill deficit, but a structural one. Patterns inside how decisions get made, how priorities get set, how delegation actually flows. Now, across hundreds of founder-led businesses, I've seen the same 6 failure modes show up over and over, and I call them the 6 vectors of execution leakage. And they include priority diffusion, signal action dilution, decision velocity leakage, delegation altitude leakage, emotional load leakage, and cognitive bandwidth drain. And I'll do a deeper video on each of those individually, so for now, don't worry about it. What matters is that they're structurally distinct, they're independent of each other, yet they do have interdependent downstream effects and they do compound. So to emphasize the point, in a business with 2 heavy vectors, it doesn't necessarily have twice the drag, but roughly 4 times the drag because they multiply. And to measure how much of these vectors are showing up in your specific business, I built a diagnostic. It's 12 questions, it takes about 8 minutes, and the output is a number called the Execution Severity Index, or ESI for short. And ESI runs from 0 to 100, higher is worse and lower is better. But the ESI on its own isn't the figure I use for economic calculations, and there are 2 more steps, and they matter. The first is Systemic Execution Compression, or SEC, and that's the structural compression of your operating system, expressed as a percentage. SEC equals ESI divided by 2. The half multiplier is structural and not statistical, representing the fact a business can't exist at 100% of execution leakage, because total execution failure means there isn't a business. So 50% is the empirical upper bound of viable but impaired execution. SEC caps at 50 by construction. Now the second step translates to SEC into actual P&L impact, because SEC by itself isn't your EBITDA drag, it's the structural compression. Now to get to the real economic damage, we apply what I call the translation factor. On the revenue side, it sits at roughly 40 to 60% of SEC, meaning roughly half of structural compression converts into measurable revenue suppression in a 12-month window. Now on the cost side, the cost leakage factor sits at 25 to 40%. 3 steps. ESI tells you behavioral severity, SEC tells you systemic compression, translation factor and cost leakage factor tells you the conservative to upper end range of suppressed revenue and operational cost expansion. Now, the diagnostic also maps you to one of 4 bands. Healthy ESI is 0 to 25, moderate leakage 25 to 50, and high leakage 50 to 75. Severe compression is 75 to 100. And each band has its own specific economic profile and its own intervention. Now, here's what the advisory work actually does. There are 3 steps in this order. Step 1 is diagnose. The aim here is a precise read on whether execution leakage is occurring inside your business and how severe it is, and which of the 6 vectors is contributing most to that compression. The diagnostic itself does the first pass. It's 12 questions, 8 minutes, and you walk out with your ESI, your SEC, your dominant vector, and your band. The deeper diagnostic work inside an engagement goes underneath the score, where the leakage is actually happening in your operating cadence, which decisions are flowing at the wrong altitude, where signal is getting diluted between the founder and the team, and what calendar architecture is feeding the cognitive bandwidth drain. Now, most founders have been guessing at all of this for years, and the diagnostics process ends that guessing immediately. Step 2 is intervention. The intervention is structural, it's not behavioral. I don't tell founders to show up better, communicate more, or be more present with the team. That's just theatre. What I do is I re-architect the operating system underneath. The work takes one of 3 formats, and it depends on the shape of the business and the pattern of the leakage. Format 1 is one-to-one founder work. Direct re-architecture of how the founder operates. where decisions sit, what altitude the founder is actually working at versus where they should be, how the founder's calendar is structured against the leakage rather than alongside it. This is the right format when the founder is the dominant operating constraint. Format 2 is workshopping. Focused intensives with the founder and a small group of senior operators around specific structural interventions. The right format when the leakage sits in how the leadership holds priorities together, or when a single high leverage intervention needs to land in compressed time. Format 3 is full installation inside the leadership team, embedding the model and the structural interventions across the entire operating layer of the business. This is where the work goes deepest and it produces the largest compounding effects. Now, whichever format the work takes, the actual interventions hit the same set of structural levers. We install a weekly operating cadence so decisions, signals, and reviews happen on a predictable rhythm rather than a reactive one. We install signal protection where every strategic decision becomes a defended block in the calendar within 48 hours, and the calendar geometry itself protects the high leverage work from reactive displacement. We re-architect prioritization, forcing the individual to have absolute clarity on daily priorities, the team to be focused down to 3 priorities or fewer per week, and 3 per quarter, so attention compounds instead of diffusing. We install calendar protection for the founder and senior leaders, ring fencing strategic capacity from the operational interruption. Weekly check-ins replace ambient anxiety with structural review. Performance arc tracking gives the founder and the leadership team a clear read on the trajectory, vector by vector, week by week. Coaching feedback gets layered exactly where individual operators need it most, but always against the structural backdrop, not in place of it. And operational management gets reset so the altitude clarity is non-negotiable from the founder downwards. Now this sounds like a lot, but don't worry, because step 3 is installation, which is the layer that simplifies, consolidates, and makes everything above easy to deploy and persist. Personal discipline decays the moment the founder gets tired or the market gets hard. System properties don't. So the installation phase does 4 things at once. Firstly, it embeds the model inside the leadership team, so the language and the diagnostic frame becomes shared property. The vocabulary stops being the founder's alone, and it starts being the operating language of the entire business. It installs a vernacular and a culture around execution integrity, which means the team starts naming leakage out loud when they see it, instead of working around it silently. It creates visibility through dashboards, weekly reviews, and clear performance arcs, making execution health observable rather than implicit. And it locks in operating standards that rise rather than slip, with no negotiation around the floor. That's what turns a 90-day coaching engagement that fades into a structural intervention that compounds for the next 3 to 5 years. Now, the numbers, because this is ultimately where the work earns its name. The cost of leaving execution leakage in place for a business in the moderate or high leakage band is somewhere between 5 and 22% of annual revenue velocity every single year. Plus operational cost expansion stacking on top of that. So on a $5 million business, that's $250,000 to over $1 million of EBITDA capacity destroyed annually. Compounded across 3 years at high leakage, you're looking at a $3 to $7 million gap in retained value between the version of your business that diagnosed and intervened and the version that didn't. And that's the largest single hidden line item in a founder-led P&L, by far. And it's the only one you can't see until you measure it. So where do you go from here? Now, if you want to see your number, the diagnostic is free. 12 questions, 8 minutes. The link is in the description. Once you take it, you'll get a sequence of emails breaking down what the score actually means in your business, how the dominant vector is showing up, and what the first intervention should look like. If you want to read further, every essay is on my Substack, Execution Economics, and it goes deeper into one of the model's pillars. Or if you're ready to see the full economic damage in your specific numbers, the economic drag report goes through your business and produces a detailed dollar figure, and the link for that is also below. That's the overview of the model. Take the diagnostic, Read the pillars if you want more depth, and reach out if any of this lands.